at first I thought about doing it without a permit. And I was like, you know what? No, people are going to come in here. I stopped myself because this is like, I said, well, maybe I could get by. And surprisingly, a lot of people that you've probably sold their homes have that mindset. Well, I'll deal with it if something comes up. How awful and how often does this come up where you're about to sell a home and you realize something's not permitted and you have to disclose it, and then it gets into this whole spiral of what could happen?
Okay, I just wrote an article for the Aspen Times yesterday about unpermitted work. And I call it in the book the ostrich effect, where you put your head in the sand.
Yeah, I see that picture in the book.
And the stress apparently comes not from the lie itself, but it comes from how many times a day you think about the lie. Okay, there's all these studies about stress related to.
Yeah.
So here's the deal: do not do it. The next book that I'm writing, called "I Bought a House and Ruined My Life, or Almost Did." There is a seminal story in that chapter about a gentleman in Ross, California, who builds a 9,000 square foot home, remodels the thing without one permit.
Oh my God.
Brings it in out of the area, contractors, subcontractors, and it's too long of a story to tell on your podcast. You have to read the book. He loses $2.5 million on the resale as a result of the town finding out after the fact. I can't even tell you what a nightmare it is. I just got chills even talking about the subject, Simon.
I'm getting chills too.
Because people tell, first when they call me, I walk through, I do the evaluation. This is going to be great. And then I get the inevitable, actually, Tracy, there's just like one thing I need to tell you. And all of a sudden now that evaluation doesn't hold, because buyers do not evaluate square footage that is unpermitted the way they value square footage that is permitted. I can promise you that. And it's like a dark cloud that never goes away over a home when you're selling it. There's the unknowns of safety. What if this contractor who did this without a permit didn't actually put the right stuff in the electrical paneling and there's a fire?
Yeah.
And my kid dies. I'm telling you,
tragic could happen.
Unpermitted work it's not only like the biggest liability you can. What if somebody dies as a result of the home you sold had unpermitted whatever? It's just the living with the lie. It's the stress from it. When am I going to get caught? What are the repercussions?
It's not worth it.
Everyone does it because they want to gas pedal through their remodel, and they're like, I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait for that municipal, inspector to come over here. And people do it, and then I'm sorry, this sounds, very crass. You barf it out on the other end.
I love it. I love
when
the
you
reality.
go to sell the house. It will cost you, and it is a nightmare.
It's almost like a long-lasting hangover. You've committed a home sin.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're stuck with it. You're worried about who you can invite to your home, who's going to say something, who's going to research something. People create enemies anywhere. And the fact that someone calls in on someone, that could be deadly. So guys, never, ever take on a remodel. Don't buy the place if you're not planning to get a permit, period. I think it's thank God I didn't. This is all permitted.
Yeah.
So it took a while. I have a funny story here. We finished the building, and all of a sudden we get a letter from the fire department saying, "Where are your sprinklers?" And we go, "Sprinklers? That's not in the permit." Right? We didn't get it in the permit. We got the permit, but the sprinklers were not in there. You go, well, you shouldn't have got the permit. The city says. We said, well, you issued it. They said, well, we issued it incorrectly. I said, okay, why is that my fault? So to get water from 2 blocks away would cost like $250,000 of all this underground digging. Veronica is freaking out. I'm freaking out because you would have to gut all these walls and do all this work.
Oh, yeah.
Veronica makes friends with the fire department chief. They talk. The baby comes over. He comes over. He goes, this is a stone building. Just put 3 fire hydrants or fire extinguishers. We went from $250,000 to $195, and he issued the permit. I mean, sometimes it's communication. I think that's important, but never go break the permit law.
Well, here's the other thing. You've got to get this second book someone comes out, because there's the stories I have. There's another one. Here's the other issue with this. Building codes change all the time, right? Every 3 years, now there's a different building code. When you have to retroactively permit because you skipped permits, like it's, let's say in 2017 and it's 2023 and they make you retroactively permit, you cannot, when you buy a home that has work done without permits, you cannot improve that home until you retroactively permit
everything
your
else.
predecessor's work. Well, guess what? If the building code's changed and now all of a sudden the fire department wants a truck turnaround
Good luck.
at the top of the driveway,
Yeah.
call that $1 million. These are multi-million-dollar errors that happen because building codes change all the time.
When I first met you, there was a property in the hills. They required a larger lane. I forgot you designed this beautiful property in the hills. They were just selling the land. And we walked away from that property. But yeah, the fire department required certain width of road, which would require so much work. I think that property's never been developed in Rock.
That's correct. It never did get developed. And these fire restrictions now with development have game changed building and development. It is far more costly. The materials that people have to use now for fire retardation and things. It's a whole new world out there with what's happened in the last 10 years in California. So.
All right. So disclosing permits, Tracy and I both agree that you should do it and making sure that you get your permit for any property. Now, let's talk about a seller. How important is seller disclosure? How can sellers avoid lawsuits? How can agents avoid liabilities? This is such a, like you mentioned, very thin line between danger and not danger, right? Because someone could get hurt in that property. You didn't know, or maybe the seller didn't tell you. Give me a little bit into that.
Okay, so first of all, anything that adversely impacts the useful enjoyment of your home and/or is an obvious, flaw or defect has to be disclosed. Where this becomes interpretive is where people consider useful enjoyment, okay? Every night at about 7 o'clock, my neighbors start drinking next door. By 9 o'clock, they're fighting. By 10 o'clock, there's plates being thrown against the wall. Do I tell my prospective buyers about this? Is that a privacy issue?
Is it?
Do I see?
Wow.
How, Simon, would you want to know if you're buying a
Yes.
home next door to people who are fighting all the time?
Absolutely.
Or how about the guy that's getting high who doesn't do edibles but smokes weed every night outside his bedroom and that weed smell is coming into your house?
My God.
I mean, you can't, so when we use the umbrella of useful enjoyment, I try to cough out of and I make my sellers come into my office, sit down, look me in the eyes, and every question I go, now let's just think about this. Are you sure you don't hear ambient noise from the way? Are you sure? Because California really favors buyers, in my opinion, over sellers.
Yeah.
In Colorado, where we also work in Aspen, that's more of a buyer beware state. California is really, I think,
It's a buyer and tenant favored.
It is. It is. And you, as a seller, I mean, I've seen people disclose everything they could possibly disclose and still get sued. I'll give you a great example. There was a house with a parking lot behind the property that was a rehabilitation, that is a rehabilitation hospital in Ross. Okay, everyone knows, seller said, rehabilitation hospital behind my property. Okay, it's there, it's obvious, everyone knows it. All you have to do is
And
look.
they disclosed it.
Disclosed it. A buyer closes. 2 months later, buyer's moving out of the home and suing the seller. He felt that seller should have said, and by the way, delivery trucks sometimes come in at night and we hear delivery trucks. Because he didn't say there are delivery trucks at night, they felt they had grounds for a non-disclosure lawsuit.
Wow.
So I'm telling you, put down every single thing. There's also now something in California disclosure called SPQ 5, Seller Property Questionnaire 5, that asks you to give a paper trail of every single document you have that you're aware of in the home ownership. That means if a plumber came by 6 years ago and there was a toilet that was running and he gave you a receipt, you're supposed to have it and add
My
it.
God.
This is impossible for people.
This is insane. Why is California doing that? It's just, it makes it unfavorable to invest in real estate. I mean, it's unfavorable in especially San Francisco to own real estate. I feel like
Yes.
I've had a lawsuit where someone faked an injury, small claims, try to get their security deposit back, ran out on $30,000 of money they owed me for their contract, try to get their like 7-9 grand back, faked this scene. And every lawyer we called, we're like, we go with the tenants. We don't even want to defend landlords.
That's right.
Get out of San Francisco.
It's almost like employment law in California.
It's insane.
You really dice roll when you hire someone and you think you've got a good, solid, honest person who becomes opportunistic. So there's a bit of playing defense when you own homes. Keep your receipts, write down when you had something repaired, give them everything, answer SPQ5, almost call a lawyer before you answer that question because listen, these things have long-standing repercussions when they go wrong with the wrong person.
And they could
buying a
sue
home.
you almost at any time. I don't know the statute of limitations, but